here's the thing. I've got my sister sitting there,
Right.
and she wants to invest in Bitcoin.
Right.
What do I tell her?
So it's you've got to look at it this way. You need to understand how it's constituted. In my opinion, this is my opinion. I want to make it very clear. Everything that I've said up until now is not to encourage anyone to make an investment. Like, I am not an investor.
Okay.
I'm not a financial person that gives people advice in terms of investment. So please don't take what I say and then go run off and put your entire wealth into Bitcoin. Okay, that's dangerous. So don't do that. I would say be careful. I say go play. Find an exchange. The easiest way for someone to get into Bitcoin, it's not the way I originally got into it. I did it more the arcane way, but the traditional way is to go to a Bitcoin exchange like Luno or Valor or Revix or one of those folks in South Africa, and then you connect your bank account and you transfer your fiat into a wallet, and then from that wallet you can go buy all these different cryptos. You can buy Bitcoin, you can buy ETH, you can buy etc. So that what do you tell her? I say the following: be careful, make sure it's money that you're willing to lose. But if you've got a 5-year, 10-year horizon view, I don't know how you cannot have Bitcoin in your portfolio today. I'm heavily exposed to Bitcoin, but I was exposed to Bitcoin 5 years ago. About 60% of my portfolio was in Bitcoin, and it remains that. And I try to continually increase it. But because I don't have the 12-month, 6-month, I put money in and I don't care because I leave it there. And because I have a view of where it's going to go. I know how the technology works underneath. And right now, the problem that we have in Bitcoin is that we have a lot of institutional money that's cascaded in, and we've got a lot of traders in here now. And they're using it as a risk asset, or they deem it a risk asset. So you'll see it closely correlated to like the NASDAQ, and now it's even closely correlated to the Dow Jones, right? And that correlation has literally happened in the last 18 months. But the key question is, when will that correlation break? And when will Bitcoin then be deemed something that is so different from everything else and it will have its own trend? I think that will happen probably in the next 24 months. And I think when that happens, yes, just my personal opinion, I believe today Bitcoin is the most undervalued asset class in the entire world.
Wow.
I think it will hit hundreds of thousands of dollars per coin in the next 24 to 36 months. I think in a 10-year horizon, millions of dollars a coin.
So essentially what you're saying is be careful.
Yes.
Take a long-term view.
Yes.
Put money that you are prepared to risk.
Yes.
It's not the place to go in today and you're out in 6 months because it's not going to pay you.
No, and then if you're doing that with Bitcoin, then you've misunderstood Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If you take a look at your portfolio, you almost want to segment your portfolio in 4 segments. I think one is where you're putting your kind of your long-term money.
Yeah.
And that's where you property, physical property, gold, and then Bitcoin. I think those, and maybe even artifacts that like art and stuff that you think has value over time. So there's a layer that's the perpetual value over time layer. Then you've got your savings, in your different institutions and wherever, and then you've got your investments, so your stocks and all of that, and then you've got your speculative stuff. And your speculative stuff is like your meme coins, and that's when you go buy like Dogecoin and mummy coin and doggy coin, and you go play around with that stuff. But that's incredibly volatile. But
That's risky.
That's risky, but that's play. I play around with NFTs. I think NFTs are huge. I think they're going to be really big. But like 99% of the NFT work today in terms of a speculative asset class will be zero. I know that. But that's okay. I just want to understand it on a technological basis, on a humanity basis. And so I play around with it. I've done well with a couple of NFTs. But broadly speaking, it's a very risky world.
Have you created your own?
No.
Okay.
I've bought, yeah.
I've
bought, but I haven't created my own. I'm not. But for the beauty of that world, though, is if you're an artist, what the internet did for information is what the crypto network is doing for creation. If you're a creator, I helped a band last year. I'll give you the story. Here's a band. They said on Facebook to all their fans, they hate government, they hate the lockdowns, it's killed their business, they can't perform anywhere. They made their money through performance. Their fan base was about 50,000 people. I pinged them on Facebook when I saw the post and I said, hey guys, have you heard of like NFTs? And the guy looked me up and he pinged me, the band lead. I'm not going to mention who they are, but he said, yes, can you just tell us? And we went through it. And you know what they did? They took 2 unreleased songs and they created an NFT with that. Then they did an NFT of album art cover. And then they did a very famous song. They made that an NFT and they put it up. They sold all 4 of those NFTs for 2.2 million rand in a night.
Wow.
And that was their performance money that they would have made over maybe 2 years as a band. They made it in an evening with NFTs. I mean, and that just changed everything for them. And you know what's nice about it?
Yeah.
They made that money, but because it's programmable, and that's what's the beautiful thing here. Crypto is programmable money. So you sell something, but you can program that any benefits onward, you take a percentage of it. So if I make a song and I put it up as an NFT, I can say whenever the song is traded ever again in its history,
Perpetuity.
2.5% of whatever that trade is comes to me forever. And there is no legal contract that needs to be signed. There's no lawyers involved. There's no intermediary. The math enforces that no matter what you do with that NFT.
So a lot of people that heard that I was going to be talking to you about this said I should ask you about what the volatility we've experienced in the cryptocurrency market over the past 3, 4, 5 weeks means for those that are trying to play. What should people be doing? What messages should they be panicking, or this is the time when you say calm down, take a long-term view? I
think 2 things. I think look at Bitcoin and just take a look at Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin just is steady, right? And take a look at the institutional money coming in, the trading desks that are forming. They're not running off and buying crypto, they're buying Bitcoin. And that should say a lot. Why? Because no publicly traded company in the world can buy a security like an altcoin. They can buy Bitcoin. Right? So if you take a look at the company's MicroStrategy that owns $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, that's a publicly traded company. You know, from a pure regulatory perspective, you've got to watch out. Regulation is probably the space's biggest threat. Technology is probably the second one. So, and then third is fraud and what people are just doing that's silly and stupid, right? But if you take a look at it as that, then first of all, from a regulatory perspective, Bitcoin is probably your safest right now.
Okay. You
know, because there's clearly an acceptance of Bitcoin by regulators in the world. They are forming regulation around Bitcoin. They like things like KYC, et cetera, et cetera. They're formulating and they're treating it as property. The others could be outlawed overnight. You could put money into Dogecoin and tomorrow it's illegal in your country. So I think regulation is probably the one you need to understand the most when you come into this space, because regulatory frameworks could kill a project, could stop you ever getting your money back out or getting it out legally. And that's the biggest challenge.
You're saying people are doing silly and stupid things. What are those things? Is this where we see pyramid scheme looking things where people what is that?
I think pyramid scheme is like it's a Ponzi scheme, pyramid scheme. These are words that people just flick around. And it's clearly people that haven't done their homework, right? So people are taking this technology. An example, the big one, that just Luna with their Terra stablecoin. They built a stablecoin infrastructure. Now stablecoins are the digitization of the dollar. And it gives the dollar more velocity. So if you want to, like fiat currencies are sticky, right? I mean, it's like, if I send an email to you in Zimbabwe, I don't have to think about a cross-border email.
No.
But yet I have to think about cross-border money. Like, why? So when you create a stable coin, that goes away. So you're not thinking about borders. So it gives fiat greater velocity. So you can move money. So sovereign funds can move their money very quickly. Stable coins are amazing, but stable coins connected to currency. So when someone pops up an exchange and they say, I have a stable coin, you need to make sure that the basis of their stable coin is a security that's an asset that's real. So they actually have, if they say that we've got 100 stable coins, that's $100 worth and each one is worth $1, you need to make sure that they have $100 in the bank fixed up, linked to that stable coin. Now, what we see happening in the stable coin world is what's happened over the last 3-4 weeks is one of them came along and built a stable coin. You know, we got stable coins backed with physical fiat currency companies. Then we got people building stable coins with with a little bit of fiat, but then also with other cryptocurrencies. And then you got guys building what these guys did recently, a stable coin with an algorithm that trades against a varied portfolio, and then that pegs it to the dollar. And that's really speculative. Like there you're trusting a lot. And that broke. And when that broke, billions was lost. And but I think it's sad that so many people get conned into this. They jump into it without being truly educated. They jump into it without informing themselves. But,
thinking that they're going to make a fast buck.
Look, I mean, this is you got to understand it on a humanities level, not a technological level. I mean, when there was the California gold rush in the United States, go look at the history. I mean, people packed up their houses, sold everything. You took their family and everything and into carts with oxen, and they did years and years to get there. People are irrational, and they will do that irrationally, and that's just the nature of
we've
people.
seen central banks beginning to walk back their opposition to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They're beginning to embrace it, though with a lot of talk around regulation and so forth.
Yeah.
We've seen the Central African Republic and
El
Salvador taking these, using Bitcoin. Zimbabwe has a huge currency issue. And we've heard some economists saying, Bitcoin is going to solve your problems. What's your response to that?
Yeah, Bitcoin could do things for Zimbabwe that's extraordinary. It really, really could. It could allow for new financial instrumentation in a way that you can't even imagine. I think if someone had to ask me, like, what was Bitcoin built for? The formal economy, like you and I, that have bank accounts and cards? No, it was Bitcoin built for people that have cash and that cash infrastructure. No, I think like even cash is quite intricate, and the structure is built around it on a social basis. The way a shebeen works, where I grew up, the way a stockfile works, it's very structured. I think Bitcoin is not for the informal economy or informal economy. It's for this, like what I call the third economy. And it's a view that I don't have right now, but imagine giving a guy 2 hours outside of Shenzhen he's got a mobile phone, he's got no access to fiat currency, mafia state, etc. So he's like, what could he do with this? What could that guy, an hour outside of Harare do with this? That's going to be interesting. He'll create new financial instrumentation. So I would encourage leadership in Zimbabwe to take a look at it the same way El Salvador's looked at it. I think make it legal tender. I think regulate it in a friendly way. Create a tax framework around it. Be careful of the crazy stuff. I think focus on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bitcoin and Lightning and the wallets associated with that. I mean, you could switch on cross-border payments instantaneously. You could create businesses that have inflows. And you could create a whole new taxation paradigm for the government. I mean, it could solve Zimbabwe's capital problems.
Wow. Imagine yourself being a politician. What would scare you from using Bitcoin? What would be the thing that you say, Bitcoin takes this thing away from me?
The people that funded my campaign telling me, if you touch that stuff, we're not funding you anymore. I think it's asymmetrical issues that get in the way. But if you take a look at El Salvador, I mean, it's what it's done there, and people will argue that there's some people that still hate it over there. They don't like Bitcoin, etc. But just from a sovereign reserve perspective, I mean, they've put money into Bitcoin. They've made money of Bitcoin over the last 2 years, 3 years that they've done this. Bitcoin has increased in value, so they've made money. They are mining Bitcoin off their volcano. They've got like hydroelectric power capabilities over there, and they're mining Bitcoin. They're putting up mining rigs, so they're generating money off their natural resources. So I think the political capital is something that politicians are still trying to wrap their heads around. And people like myself are doing a whole lot of background work with politicians in this country. I mean, politicians are asking the right questions, saying, okay, what is this? And where does it go? And should we be scared of it?
Yeah.
Does it mean an outflow, a risk thing where people, it's an incredible opportunity. I mean,
what do you say to politicians when they say that?
Embrace it.
Embrace it.
It's inevitable, number one.
Yeah.
You can't outlaw it. It's like outlawing the internet. Like you can try, but then Starlink comes along with Elon Musk, and then it's inevitable. Connectivity. This is inevitable. Number one. The question is, how do you build a regulatory framework that protects your citizenry from the scammers? How do you educate your citizenry? And how do you derive political capital from this? I think there's enormous political capital that lays dormant for politicians in this regard.
I've asked you this question before, but I'm asking it for these people, for the benefit of these people here and for the benefit of the audience who are watching us all over the world. What do you mean by Bitcoin mining? Can you break it down for us as slowly as possible? And it's the connection to energy use and its implications to global warming.
So first of all, I tweeted, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the energy spent on Bitcoin mining is the most effective, efficient, and valuable form of energy utilization of anything on the planet today.
Wow.
People don't understand Bitcoin. So when they talk about, we see papers being written about greenhouse gases and emissions. A Bitcoin server farm, a farm where machines are sitting and mining the ledger with proof of work as the engine, which I'll explain in a second, takes a lot of capacity and a lot of electricity. But what's the resultant? First of all, that entity, there's no emissions. It's a zero emission point of presence. There's no emissions. So in terms of green, what are you talking about? First of all. Second of all, it is, if you take a look at the activity that's happening, people putting value in, and what that value results in, the net result relative to the energy consumption, there's nothing on the planet that compares to it. There's no industry. Take a look at healthcare, take a look at food, take a look at, there is no industry in the world where energy goes in and the net resultant is what you get with Bitcoin. It's not the same. So mining. So Bitcoin works in a decentralized manner. So what we have in the network, we have nodes, and then we have miners. So nodes are verifiers, and miners are the engines that when a transaction happens, puts up their hand to say, I want to process the transaction. Okay, so I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible.
Sure.
I want to pay you, I want to send you Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm in Zimbabwe.
You're in Zimbabwe, so I want to send you 500,000 Satoshis. Okay, those are little, so I want to send you, so I go, send Trevor this, I want to pay Trevor this. What happens is all the Bitcoin miners in the world, when I send that instruction, put up their hands and go, I want to mine it. So they take the entire ledger, and the ledger is about 4 gig big now. I think it may be bigger, but the last time I looked, it's about 4 gigs. So the entire Bitcoin ledger, all the transactions that happened from 2009 up until today, it's about 4 gig big. I may be wrong, maybe 400 gig? I may be wrong in that. But the point is then, everyone puts up their hand and they say, I want to mine it. And then they try to put as much processing power behind it to do the mining, which is the mathematical instruction to add that record onto the entire ledger. And that energy that goes behind the processing to do that, the first person that does it right, puts up their hand, processes the ledger, it gets given to the nodes to say, here's the new ledger now because it's been given to Trevor, and this is the new ledger for Bitcoin in the world. That putting up my hand
is the mining.
I'm putting up my hand, I want to do it, and then I start mining it, and then I apply the math, and then the resultant is done, the resultant gets signed.
How quick is that process?
It's slow today.
Okay. Will it ever be fast?
We don't want that. We don't want high velocity in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Bitcoin is made up of 3 layers. We've got the low velocity layer, which is layer 1. That's where the ledger gets mined. It utilizes a thing called proof of work to do it. And that's the methodology employed by the algorithm to process the transaction of the ledger. And that we don't want hyperscaled. We want that to work the way it works. It must be I don't like things that move fast and are flashy when it comes to money. So Bitcoin is not that. Bitcoin is stable.
Yeah.
It is perpetual.
Yeah.
It's immutable. It's sensor resistant, and it works the way it does. And it doesn't want to scale.
If you're confused about healthcare, it's easier to put your trust in us, where every contribution is secure and you can be sure that your membership card will be accepted. So relax, you're in safe hands with us. with access to world-class medical providers, little to no shortfalls, and free iGo membership for all our seamless members. Join us today. Together, we make a difference.
Here's my problem. I'll go to the audience now. So Gen Z is setting the agenda.
Yeah.
These are our children. They're setting the agenda. And you're saying to us that nobody owns this thing, nobody controls this thing,
Yeah.
nobody can censor this thing. Why should we trust something that we can't control and own and
Let me turn that question around. The institutions that you're putting your wealth in today, how can you trust them? You in Zimbabwe, you saw what happened.
But I can go and talk to the bank manager. I can go and talk to somebody.
You're great, but you Trevor Ncube, so you can't do that. But Joe Soap, that's a taxi driver, can't talk to some. He has no access to some Shabalala. He has to sit in a line and talk to a bank manager if he's ready, but some switched off all the banks physically. So now it's all digital. So who does he speak to? And when he tries to speak to it, he has to have data on his phone. He has to speak to a bot. It's not a real human being until he finally speaks to a human being, and that human being may not even understand his accent. That's banking today. That's insane. That's friction back. The beauty here is that taxi driver doesn't have to speak to anyone. He can take layer one and put his money into layer one, and that money will be around 1,000 years from today, unless something happens to the planet and we all get nuked or something. But 1,000 years from today, guaranteed it's going to be there, number one. Number two is he can use layer two, which is the layer that gives Bitcoin velocity, which is the Lightning Network. Everyone focuses on Bitcoin. You got to understand the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is part of the Bitcoin layering. It's layer two, and it gives Bitcoin incredible velocity, a velocity that surpasses Visa and MasterCard. It's a velocity that passes any currency in the world today. And then you got layer three, which is all the wallets and all that stuff and innovation that sits on top of it. But the possibility for innovation for that taxi driver across all of this is exponential versus what you're describing. I trust math. What you're describing is faith. Fiat currency is faith. You have faith that when I say I'm going to buy that phone from you and I give you money, you have faith that that money will be worth something so you can acquire something else later on. I love the guy that wrote Sapiens, Yuval Noah, he said money is the greatest fiction. Not everyone believes in God, but everyone believes in money, right?
I love your brain, your beautiful brain, the way you think. I want these people to understand who you are. Where were you born? Where did you go to school? as briefly as possible. Who is Stafford Masie?
I'm just a guy from El Dorado Park, south of Johannesburg, in probably one of the most gangster and drug-riddled areas in South Africa. I mean, people talk about the Cape Flats. Go to El Dorado Park where I grew up. It's hectic. I took my wife there. I'm married to a Caucasian lady, and I took her there, and she was very scared. And we go there often from just a pure philanthropy perspective. But that's where I'm from.
Which schools did you attend?
I went to Sacred Heart College in my high school. I went to Mayfair Convent in Mayfair. So my dad spent a lot of money back then on private school education. You know, he wanted to make sure that was possible, and we were lucky. And I grew up there, and he realized that if I stayed there, that I would be prone to all the gangsterism and et cetera. And I got a break. My dad, I'm not going to go into all the personal stories. There's no time for that. But I landed up in Israel. I stayed there, and I got an opportunity that most kids in El Dorado, the difference between me and a guy that's walking around right now in El Dorado Park with a knife in his back pocket and stitches on his face, is that I got a lucky break. I got to see a context greater than El Dorado Park. When I grew up in El Dorado Park, my purview was Dickies jeans, Superga shoes, white wall rims, and cassette decks that we stole from the white kids in Parktown North when we came here. Right? That's how we grew up. We made money going to the suburbs. And I managed to land up in a foreign country, meeting different people, exposed to them. And when I finally landed up back here in South Africa and I went back to El Dorado Park, the things that attracted me when I lived there originally didn't attract me anymore, because I just was given an opportunity to see through a window that the world had a greater context, that there was more to everything than what we had seen there. And I think education is one-sided, but also global exposure. And I think that's the beauty of the internet, is that connectivity gives an opportunity for someone that may not have a dad that has the capability to fly them to another country or arrange that for that to happen. They have the opportunity to speak to someone with an alternate opinion, or to use Google Earth to see what it's like in Mexico City, or to see what it's like in LA. I think that's the beauty of technology, because it really does make things borderless in terms of
So
access.
there's and this is my last question. There's a big gap between El Dorado Park and the stuff you're telling us here. I mean, this is any scars, any stuff
Of
that
course.
you grew up with that has remained with you?
Yeah, when we went through the apartheid that we went through, which is probably, I think I was the last kind of generation that felt the clinicalness of apartheid, which is like, you can't go to the beach. There's only one dentist. You can, the bus drivers that won't pick you up. We still saw that, early 90s. It was late 80s, early 90s. I was high school. It was around. So that was, and the trauma of going through that. I mean, when I went to Sacred Heart College, I'll never forget it. We play soccer, and the bus would come by, and the driver wouldn't pick me up. And I'd wait there until 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and no bus.
Because you're not the right color.
Not the right color. And then, you'd knock on some friends' doors that lived near the school, and then they'd house you for the night. And you could sleep either in the car outside, or you could sleep in, so you going through all of that at that age was very traumatic. At the time, this is life. But these were scars. This was trauma. And it built up an incredible amount of resilience, right? To see your dad being smacked by a cop, and, in Joburg, and being all thrown into Bucky, all of that stuff that we saw growing up, that trauma still lies dormant in so many men of color in this country, and we have never dealt with it properly. And what happens is we land up in relationships, and either professionally or personal relationships, and we play out that trauma. Now, that trauma can play out in two ways. For me, it was a great strength. Let me talk about it positively.
Sure.
To raise capital in a startup, to work for 72 hours at a stretch and code, to push the boundaries, to work. I mean, I am not smarter than the other guy, but one thing I know I will do is work harder than the other guy. And because of that tenacity comes from all the trauma. And that's a good thing. So you can take your trauma and your
Turn it into something positive.
Yeah, but you know what does happen in your personal life with relationships? That's where it tends to play itself out in the negative. So, example, you don't have tolerance for your kids because you put them into private schools, give them all of this thing, and so you have no tolerance for their situation in any way or form. So you lose your vulnerability and you lose your compassion. And so you become a dad that's more bludgeoned in how you deal with them. In a relationship, you become traumatic to be with, especially because relationships go through ebbs and flows. They're good and then they're bad. But when you're dealing with so much trauma, when the bad chapters come along, you're horrific. You can be a very horrific man. And I think that's, when I take a look at the country and I read about gender-based violence and I read about, I think there's so much trauma, hurt, pain that has never, I'm talking about the male population now, that has never been truly dealt with. The truth and recognition, the TRC was a good thing because it did it on a nation state basis, but I don't think on an individual capacity that we've done it. And I can tell you what, things like psychiatry, psychologists, therapy, doing work, reading the books that makes you do work was something that my wife exposed me to. So this is something that is probably 10 years old, where I've learned to strive to become a better person, to recognize my behaviors relative to that pain. That pain funnels itself and becomes fuel in a business capacity, but it becomes fuel in a personal capacity. It doesn't necessarily have positive outcomes. And unfortunately, culturally, it's like something that white people do. White people go to therapists and white people do that. Like we get married and we stick around in bad marriages and we just do it because.
But therapy is important for all of us.
And I think it's about looking inward and really dealing with self. And over the last decade, if you had to ask me personally, I've been incredibly successful professionally, but the fuel that drove that, I've had to really tap out of my tank personally. And the last 10 years has been a lot of that. Becoming a better husband, becoming a better dad. I have 3 daughters. Daughters require a man to really be more vulnerable and be in contact with self than maybe a boy does. I don't have a boy, so I can't really speak to that. But I just think that the greatest challenge that I have in my life right now is self. It's really looking inward and dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion with Simon on that issue, which is an interesting contrast before we go to the audience. Bitcoin can't solve the self.
No.
The self needs to be dealt with by you and yourself in quiet moments.
Yeah.
Thank you for being vulnerable. Let me turn to the audience now, and I can see hands are going up. Give the hands the mic to ask the question. Please, can I ask that you be brief? We ask a question, not a comment. The comments we'll deal with later on. Please be brief with your comment, and then Stafford will answer the questions. Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Simba. Thank you so much, Mr. Ncube and Stafford. I think the conversation has been very insightful. To some of the elements that you're mentioning, I think I just have a question around the African context of how one could use Bitcoin to solve some of the challenges that we have here. And I think particularly because the information you're sharing is not necessarily as mainstream accessible to a continent that is predominantly a lot younger than the rest of the continents in the world. And so how do we bridge that gap?
Thanks, Simba. Thank you.
Brilliant question. I think it's an excellent question. I think and I've been toiling with this for a while, like what's the Africanization of this thing, this asset? And like, what does it mean to us? And I've studied El Salvador like as much as I possibly can based upon the information that I have access to. I'm planning a trip there. I want to actually go there to go take a look at it. And so multiple things. I think number one, I think it's a massive opportunity for us. If you take a look at the natural resources that we have on the continent, it's profound. If you take a look at traditional banking on the continent, folks like Sim, I think the time has come, right? I think it's a new dispensation. And they're in big trouble, in my opinion. It is a generation that will never engage with them like the other generations did. So as banks, we really got to rethink, what we do relative to that space. I'm on a board of a bank, and I'm constantly saying this within that institution, that we really have to embrace this because this is where this generation is. I think it's a massive opportunity for us. I think the latent human potential, the latent human capital on our continent is the largest pool in the world. The next billion people that are going to get connected to the internet the next billion is Africa. There isn't another next one. It's us. And when we get connected, we're not just going to get connected, right? We're going to get connected to, I always used to think like connectivity was broadband connectivity and then access to information. That's like Web 2 way of thinking. I think this new way of thinking is that we are connecting latent human capital to a disparate species of artificial intelligences, right? And that combination, that human-machine symbiosis will result in something quite extraordinary. And I think that's the opportunity for Africa. And what I worry about Africa right now is that we've got a lot of capital influx over the last 24 months. Extraordinary. I mean, billions is coming into Africa for fintech. Extraordinary. It's like really, really big amounts of money. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. Because first of all, it's building and innovating on archaic old rails versus the potential that we could have. And I think, but it's going to take leadership to understand the opportunity. Then the second step is to take that leadership and then build regulatory frameworks around it to allow it to exist and ferment and grow. And I think when that happens, something extraordinary could happen. So it's ours to lose. Bitcoin could be tectonic. It could be that next, what the internet did for the formal world, Bitcoin could do for Africa. Right? In terms of exposing businesses globally to us, trade, and the latent trade potential, the SMME world over here, the music that's untapped in Africa, the arts and culture that lays undiscovered still today. I think Bitcoin could be the very thing that unravels it. Now, the basics is we have the natural resources. We've got big rivers. We've got everything. We've got sunlight. I mean, more sunlight than certain parts of the world has. If we take a look at our natural resources relative to mining Bitcoin, we should be leading the world. I mean, that's the opportunity for us.
Thank you, Stafford. The next question, sir. Mr. Stole?
Excellent. Guys, this is quite an insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Trevor, Stafford. My question is around, perhaps let me put it this way. What we learn from history is that we don't learn from it. And sometimes it just feels that, we are going around in circles as a society. King Solomon in the Bible talks about, there's nothing new under the face of the sun. So now, coming back to this Bitcoin story, I mean, it's a great technology with, great possibilities. But the concern really from my side is, the big companies, some of whom have dubious reputations, are now investing in Bitcoin. So you might find that, these guys own a chunk, from an investor point of view of this particular initiative. Therefore, they can now begin to manipulate it moving forward. So that's the first question. The second one is on the issue of Bitcoin solving Zim's problems. I'm not sure though that might be possible. My view is that the macro fundamentals are problematic in Zimbabwe, and you require the macro issues to be dealt with. In particular, political leadership is the one that drives economic activity as such. The reason that I won't go and buy a farm in Zim, when they're quite cheap in Bulawayo or elsewhere, comparative to South Africa, is that I cannot be certain what I'm going to do with it when I buy a farm. What am I going to do with it, or what is that farm going to do? So because the macro fundamentals are problematic. Absolutely. In particular, the political mindset in that country.
Thank you, Mr. Sterling.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think let me deal with the second comment around Zimbabwe. And I think absolutely, I don't speak about it naively. And that's why I say in this space, the opportunity starts and begins through the regulatory door. And then when I talk about the regulatory door, that is where political macroeconomic factors come into play. Where leadership truly understands how this could benefit the economy, and they accelerate it from a proper taxation structure and a legislation that's friendly to it. The problem that we have is that we do have leaders that don't understand it. They fundamentally don't understand it. But if we got them to understand it, this is a tool. This is a tool. And if we had time, I could show you exactly how a country like Zimbabwe could metamorphosize itself. And when it did, it wouldn't be subject anymore to foreign states, foreign nations influencing its economy. El Salvador right now has got lots of pressure. The IMF is scoffing at what it's doing. It's saying it's dangerous, etc. But the macroeconomic factors are not proving that out. In fact, trading with El Salvador has never been easier now. Paying, the fluidity of money, the frictionless way, the velocity of fiat. It's incredible what's happening and we're going to see that probably in Central African Republic too. But take a look at the white paper that Carr has published. Now, it's a white paper that you can scoff at, but there's a leader imagining a Bitcoin island in his country, a place where you can come, it's free of taxation, it's free of this, you can use the natural resources to mine it, and here's the tax framework around it. It's a beautiful vision. And if he could execute against that, he could transform that country into an incredible. I think Zimbabwe sits with that same opportunity in mind. But again, we need leaders to understand this and build the proper frameworks around it. The first question was, this is a question that used to come up, but it doesn't come up so much anymore. If you take a look at Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, he owns 0.0, and on that slide that I showed, I think he owns 0.024% of Bitcoin. And he owns just over almost $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. There's nothing that he can do to change the price of Bitcoin. Nothing. We saw just recently over the last 3-4 weeks, when the Luna Terra saga happened with the stablecoin that collapsed, they sold $3.6 billion worth of Bitcoin. Right off, what did it do to the Bitcoin price? Bitcoin price went up. So we out of that territory now because of the liquidity in the space where big whales come along and move the price. The amount of retail investment that's cascading into this space is extraordinary. And institutions coming in and buying billions and billions and billions, it's highly unlikely that we'll ever get to a point where they could manipulate the price or they could collude or do something, because that's not, you can't manipulate the math. You just can't do that to Bitcoin. And about 2 years ago, you were absolutely right. Like Elon Musk was doing stuff to Bitcoin. He would like tweet and then the price would do stuff. But have you noticed he can't do that anymore? So yes, today, are we still subject to that? Could happen. In 2 years' time, less likely. 5 years' time, definitely not. 10 years' time, possible. Just because of the way it works. Yeah.
Thank you, Stafford. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry. My name is Dumisani. I just want to find out which is a good Bitcoin wallet besides Luno that one can, I've had some issues with Luno.
Okay.
And then the second question is with regards to NFTs, we've bought some sports NFTs like NBA Short, UFC Strike,
right,
and all that. So would you say, is it a good thing? Because there's drops that, come regularly. And I see people around the world, they are into it, buying them and all that, keeping those pegs. Would you say it's a good investment?
Thank you, sir. Very good question. At least you're in there playing, eh?
Yeah.
There's somebody who's playing with it.
My opinion is 95% of all NFTs in existence today will be gone and worthless and not valuable. I think you've got to take a look at the institutions behind them and how they're executing against it and what's their vision around that NFT. So example, Bored Apes, VFriends, World of Woman, CryptoPunks. You got to take a look at what they are. So this is, what's required when you invest in NFTs is not pure trading skill. What's required is understanding the art world, the abstract, and the esoterical. So example, why I like World of Woman is because just its origin, female, it's the first that ever grew up to become that female. It's got that female backing founder thing going on for it. And that esoterical aspect means it's got that history now in the NFT world. Like everyone that comes after that will be second. So they've got like that esoterical value that will be valuable to someone out there. Then you take a look at Bored Apes. Bored Apes is doing something interesting with their NFTs. It's not just a static JPEG. What they're doing is they're starting to build and execute on derivatives around that ecosystem, right? So now you got Bored Ape Land, where now they're creating like a metaverse virtual place where you can go with your Bored Ape and the collateral you can build up around your Bored Ape utilizing the Bored Ape coin, the Ape coin. Now they've got a token, they've got a virtual land, and they're even playing it out in the physical world where you can go to a Bored Ape restaurant in New York City, and if you have a Bored Ape, you get a table, you get a discount, you get this, you get a recognize, you can use your Bored Ape coin and da. So look at projects where the founders have vision, and then also take a look at how they're going to execute around that, and then think about how they are bringing in the esoterics into that. Are they first? Therefore, they're part of the history of it. Do they have value around the content itself, like Bored Apes and what it is? Is it beautiful? Is there demand for it? I mean, Bored Apes, I don't own a Bored Ape. I wish I bought a Bored Ape. I think it's amazing. It's great. So a long story. I can't tell you whether it's a good investment or not. I can only say is 95 to 98% of the stuff's going to be JPEGs and nothing. But you need to look out for the that 3 to 5% that's going to be massive. And I think you got to look at not just what it is, you got to take a look at its history, its context, its esoterics, and how they execute around it. So we don't have time now, but I could spend a whole afternoon on NFTs and go into it in depth with you. I love it. I think it's awesome. I don't speak about it a lot because it's so dangerous. You got to, if you go into that world, be willing to lose everything. Do it with money that you know could go away tomorrow or in 2 weeks' time be worthless. You got to have that. So, but I take a look at like NBA, what the NBA's franchise has done with what they've done with NFTs. I think that's amazing, and I think that is a thing that other sports franchises and brands could learn from. And they were one of the first, and what they're doing is extraordinary. But I think if you take a look at what soccer clubs are doing, though, in European leagues and England, their NFTs are worthless because they're not executing in that particular. So you got to like really not just run with the momentum, really understand and be patient. So that's my one view of NFTs. The other one on which wallet?
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, there's Valor, there's Revix. It's also what do you want to do with? Do you want a wallet where you have all your various cryptocurrencies in it, or do you want a wallet that has more utility, like a MetaMask wallet? With a MetaMask wallet, you can have all your cryptocurrencies, tokens, NFTs, and you can hop around with your MetaMask across multiverses into NFT marketplaces, etc.
So from what you're saying is go for a wallet of a collection of,
So yes, let me look. I use MetaMask because but there's better ones now, and something happened to MetaMask a few months ago, and people are like a little bit against it because it got stopped. But I use MetaMask. It's my general purpose wallet that I use to get into marketplaces, etc. I think it's just what you want to do with it. But the true aspect of this is not to have your crypto in exchanges and wallets.
Yeah.
You should have your crypto, what they call air-gapped. So you should have your keys in your pocket or somewhere safe somewhere.
Yeah. I think what I'm getting from this is dangerous. Don't do it alone at home, eh?
I think you can do it. I think it's dangerous if you're not educated. I think you really need to educate yourself and make sure that you're looking at fundamentals. You truly understand what you're investing in. You need to really do the homework.
Absolutely.
Because you'll get burnt if you don't do the homework. But I don't have my crypto on an exchange. My Bitcoin doesn't live on an exchange. I don't trust Luno or Valor to do cold storage with my keys and to keep it somewhere safe for me. I don't trust that. I think the government could turn around and tell Luno or Valor to do certain things, and who knows what then. Then I can't gain access to it. So my keys are stored on an off-chain mechanism, and I store it in a physical place that me and my family know where it is. I don't disclose that either.
Yeah. Gee, this is complicated. My brain is mining.
You know what it is, Trevor? It's power. It's power that you've never had over your own capital. And then when you read the book, The Sovereign Individual, you start realizing that we now have the tools and capabilities and power to truly become sovereign individuals, where you have full control over your wealth, the movement of it, the velocity associated with it, where it's stored, but there does come danger. I do think in the future exchanges exist because for the same reason fiat currency led to banks.
Okay.
As people, we don't want to own stuff. We want someone else to take care of the security of it. Yeah.
Yes,
one
ma'am.
question about crypto. On social media, you get, I don't know if you guys had those people that approach you on social media, like Twitter and Instagram, asking you, do you want to buy crypto? And you're not sure if it's spam or if it's legit. Are those legit salespeople, or would you go with that?
No.
Don't touch them.
Don't buy crypto based upon an ad that someone's put up and you're clicking on their ad. Don't do that. Go to the core. Go to valor.com. and go do your research on there and get educated and watch out. I mean, there's a lot of scams here. There's a lot of you got to understand the fundamentals. My advice to you is, before you do anything in this space, it's still early. Don't worry about Bitcoin being this, then tomorrow it's this. Don't worry about that. It's still very early. Bitcoin may even still go down to $100 a coin. Right? I'm a hodler, so they call it diamond hands. I don't care what happens to Bitcoin because I I have a belief in what it will be decades from now. I have a long-term view.
How
But
much must we start with? Like, can you start with 50 Rand?
Yeah,
Do
you can
wanna,
buy. You can buy
gamble?
like 50 rands worth of Bitcoin. Yeah, you can go to an exchange and take 50 rand and connect your bank account and go buy it. So, but before you do, I think do that. But in parallel, read the books.
Yeah.
Get into it. Like the 4 books that I shared today, is a very good contextualization of the space.
Okay.
Because you quickly slip down the slide of treating it like a speculative asset class, and you start wanting to trade it, and you look at it every day, and then when it moves, you sell. When it doesn't, you do this. And like if you can stay away from that, because you're not a trader. Yeah, you're not a trader. Traders do that. Leave it up to them. If you're not, just stay away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good advice there. And I think, Stafford, you've been saying so many times, read, educate yourself, understand what you're getting yourself involved. That's very important.
1,000 hours. Ask yourself, have you done 1,000 hours of research? Have you spent 1,000 hours? 1,000 hours is not a lot of hours. You know?
Okay, we'll take the last question. Yes, sir.
This is very, very insightful. I think I'm just blown away. I think my concern and partly my question comes of a living experience where I had a colleague at some point, someone that was very, very invested and branded their car to this Bitcoin.
Wow.
They really went for this. And I remember in certain instances, there were days where they would skip work because then they going to this province and then they do presentations and all of that. And came a point where they were really making money, you know? And I wanted to jump on this. So the person also invited myself and my wife, and we sat and she did lunch and supper for us and bought everything and showed us this website that was Mind City, where there was transactions happening, and then they then paid school fees instantaneously, and we were really, really sold. But then the person really took like a deep dive struggle last year where they really lost a lot. And the partners that they were then doing this with also took the dive. So my concern is this volatility, right? Because she herself was in it for the long term, but it didn't really pan out. And as a result, she then left work because then this was working very well. And then this year, late last year, she then went back into the workspace, but then she's still trying to recover. So I wanted to understand, when it comes to its volatility, what are the risks and what are the gains for these people that are trying to bring everyone to sign up for Bitcoin?
Wow, what I like is you're not being theoretical, you're sharing with us a lived experience.
Yeah,
Stafford?
I've heard this a lot.
Yeah.
Where people get taken to presentations and they get asked to transfer money into this exchange, and then this exchange will do this, and the money will go up, and then they'll get these dividends from it, and things will get paid. And when things are going up and hockey sticking,
It's okay.
I mean, it's like, wow, it's a no-brainer. I should put my money in. I think you need to be careful, number one, right? And I keep coming back, do the research. Don't let someone tell you about Bitcoin. Go teach yourself about Bitcoin. Teach yourself. Don't let someone teach. Don't go into a room and then get mesmerized by someone about Bitcoin. If there's one thing I want to leave you with today, is go do the 100 hours. Go do 100 hours of research, your own investigation, go read the books, and take a step back, take it all in, then maybe buy a little bit of Bitcoin. And then go back and do the 900 other hours of research. Read the original white paper. Read the books. Don't go trading on exchanges. Go onto the core layer 1 network and get Bitcoin like that. Do crypto wallet to crypto wallet money movement. Understand how the money moves, what happens. Send from point A to point B. If you really want to get your kids involved, they'll do it better than you on a technological basis. They'll do things that you probably would be too scared to do. They'll do it, and they'll do it better than you. And watch what they're doing. Stay away from get rich quick. Put it in here, all the school fees are paid. Anytime you see stuff like that, just
Run away.
Just run away. Even if your friend does it, and just run away. That's just a pure basis. Bitcoin, understand it, understand it, understand it. It's a beautiful journey when you go down the rabbit hole because it's going to teach you the history of money. My 21-year-old and my 18-year-old, 4 years ago, I took them to lunch. And I said, my responsibility as a parent is to teach you Bitcoin. And we went to a lunch, and I sat down with my girls, and I took them through it, and I went deep, deep, deep. The lunch turned out to be a whole afternoon. We were kicked out the restaurant. We went home, and we kept on going. They now own Bitcoin. They understand how their keys work. They have their keys on ledger sticks. They're doing stuff with it. They're into the crypto. And what they're doing is scary for me, but they're doing it with capital that they're willing to do. But they're not getting conned because they understand the underlying mechanism. They understand how it works. That's where you need to start in this space. The beauty of it is the discussions that you have with your friends, family, children, when you go down this rabbit hole is fascinating because you start with the history of money. Like, what's the history of money? And you just keep going in there. It's a beautiful thing. It becomes anthropological. It becomes paleontological. And then it becomes like economical. And you go down, you start learning, and you start learning how human character makes it. And then you'll never fall for a scheme like that. Because it'll teach you all of this. If you're trying to get rich quick, good luck. But if you look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin, which is it's a store of value that you can put something into that you can give to your children one day. I bought Bitcoin for my kids years ago. And that Bitcoin is theirs. And if they leave it there, no Cyril Ramaphosa, no government leader can take it away from them. No matter what happens in South Africa, they can flee with it. And no one can take it. It's an incredible thing. They memorize their keys. They know they've got their wealth in their heads, not in a bank.
Wonderful. Say you're itching. Really, it must be short, sir.
It's very short.
Yeah.
I just want to give him a perspective. That what your friend was involved in, it was called Bitcoin Vault. It was called Bitcoin Vault, and I know about it. A lot of people, when it started, everybody was making money. And I think the people behind it, that's what they wanted to do. They were catching people just like Crowd One. I don't know if you heard of Crowd One. Crowd One was the same. So what he's talking about, Bitcoin in reality, is totally different from those.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Stafford, this has been amazing, absolutely amazing, as everybody's been saying. Insightful. I'm going to ask you to please share those 3 books.
Okay.
If people want to understand Bitcoin and digital currency, what 3 books are you recommending?
Okay, there's 4 now. I used to say 3, and then I finished Ray Dalio's one.
Okay.
The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. Okay. It's absolutely brilliant. Wonderful. The second one is the Bitcoin Standard. The third one is the Fiat Standard. And the fourth one is the Sovereign Individual. Those 4 books, if you just start there. And people will argue against me and they probably stop. Just read. For me, those books contextualize it, give you a very good, solid understanding of what money is, the history of money. Talk about they allude to Austrian economics. They tell you about fiat and they tell you about Bitcoin. And I just think it's a great place as a business person for you to start. Get through those 4 books. That's the beginning of your first 100 hours. Is those first 4 books, right? And then also get the white paper. Download the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. Read the Bitcoin white paper. It's amazing how many people are in the space and they haven't read the white paper. Read the white paper. Read it. See what you understand, don't understand in it, and then start investigating around that on the academic papers. And it's once you've done that, you're down this rabbit hole and you will want to spray paint your car with Bitcoin all over it. The enthusiasm, and it won't be about invest now. It's because Bitcoin is the greatest technological gift ever given to mankind.
On that positive note, we will end it. I mean, obviously you can tell, Stafford Masie and I can go the whole day and I'm sure you would enjoy it. So much wisdom, Very insightful, Stafford. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank
your,
you for the
for your
opportunity.
time. I mean,
Yeah.
this is precious. I'm sure our audience who are all over the world who've been watching have thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you to the audience in the
thank
room.
you.
Thank you to the audience all across the world who've been watching In Conversation with Trevor, South African series. Remember, we are a weekly show. Monday, 7 a.m. Central African time. Subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of these In Conversation with Trevor South African series. Thank you for watching, and cheers to you all.